Hey everybody, and welcome. In today's video, we're going to focus a bit more about Unreal Engine 4 and how we can use the tools that we have on our disposal inside Unreal to create our startup level or our blockout level. Now, generally, when you're working with Unreal, the way that you would model something is that you would model it in an outside modeling software like 3ds Max, Maya, Blender, or any other 3D modeling software, and then bring in those assets as FBXs and import them into Unreal. But we don't always have to go that way, at least not in the beginning, because whenever we're making something in Unreal and we haven't had that thing being set in stone, what we can do is we can make the initial level blockout inside Unreal. Just so it would be easier to follow along and there are no other things that would take your attention, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new level. Now, creating a new level inside Unreal is very easy. All you gotta do is go File, click on New Level. When this thing pops up, I'm going to choose an empty level because this will get rid of everything that's inside the existing level, which will give me an empty scene, like so. Alright, there we go. So now we have an empty scene, which can be seen over here. And also in the World Outliner, as you can see, there is nothing in here. So we can start explaining the things one by one. So the first thing that I would like to address is when I go over in my modes, I'm going to click on place, and over here we have different things that we can choose. I'm going to choose the basic one. Now the reason for choosing this is that in here we can find some of the most basic geometry types like a cube, sphere, cylinder, cone. And if I, for example, pull in one cube, you're going to see that I can drag it to wherever I want it to be set. Now as soon as this thing is in here, I'm going to take a look at this portion over here where it says details. If you've pulled it somewhere else, just find it. So underneath the details, you have the first thing that we want to look at is the transform. Now the transform will basically show you where your and when I'm looking at over here, what I can see is the location. Now the location is basically where your model is set in the world. For example, if I go over here and I can just click and set this thing as 0, tab 0, 0, now I know my cube is centered at the 0, 0, 0 point origin. Now, what this thing is going to allow me to do is basically move it around if I needed to be at a certain point. Now, if I take a look down, we have the rotation and we have the scale. If I go down below, you will see that we have a lot of options in here. But for now, we won't be looking at all of these options. For now, we just want to make sure that we can block out our level. Now, the first thing I'm going to do here is, since I don't have any lights in my scene, I'm going to go over to lit and click here and put it as an unlit, as so. Now, if I want to make this thing bigger, the way to do it would be to basically come in and scale it outwards, like so, then scale it on the y-axis and scale it on the x-axis. Now, the problem with having this thing as so is that I don't really have too much control over how big this thing is going to be, because I can scale it and I can go into the transform and try to manually scale it, but it's not very, very efficient. If I want to have a better control over how this thing is going to be, I'm actually going to delete this. And instead of using a cube for my basic, I'm going to jump down to geometry. And from here, I'm going to choose a box. Now, what you're going to notice is as soon as I drag this thing in, it doesn't really look as a box until I drop it off. And now this here box if I go over to the transform, you can see that I have those same exact options. So I can go again, zero it out at 0, 0, 0. But now what you can notice is that as I have this thing selected, I can see that I have all of these vertices on the end, and I can select the faces. Now what this means is that I can modify these. And the way to do this is, once you've created this through the geometry tab, what you want to do is basically go over to geometry editing. Click here, and now you're going to notice that this thing just got blue. And everything I have selected is now yellow. Now this will give me the ability to select certain faces, or if I choose, to select different vertices. And once we have this thing selected, it's pretty much just like we are inside 3ds Max and we have an edit poly on top of it. We can move around the polygons and this thing is going to squash it. I can select different vertices by holding down Control. So pretty much same as Max. Just pull it upwards and there we go. Pretty much simple box modeling technique. Now we can just pull this thing to any form that we might need it to be, or in any size. So, and here we go. We basically now have a way of adding in a piece of geometry that we can model until we get it to the right size for whatever that we are doing. So, if we call this our floor, for now, I'm going to go in and add in a few more edges here, or a few more boxes to help us with the actual walls that we'd like to create for this starting room. So again, I'm going to go over to create, place, geometry, and drag in another box, as so. Again, now go over into geometry editing, pull this inwards until we get it to the point where we basically want to have the width of the wall. Move it to the end. And now another thing that I would like to mention is, for example, just now I'm going to move this thing inwards. Now, one of the things that I want to mention is that you've probably seen me when I'm moving this, that at a certain amount, this thing kind of snaps into place. Now the reason for this is that over here we have some options that we can click. For example, if I go over and mouse over, it's going to give me this toolbar explaining that it enables or disables snapping to the grid when dragging objects around. If I click this thing, this means it's toggled off. Now I can move it to pretty much any size that I want without that snapping. If this thing is turned on, then the snapping will be done at increments of 10. If I click on the 10, I can pretty much choose what that increment should be. For example, if I choose a 500, now if I move, it's going to go way up for 500 units. Now you should know that inside Unreal, the units are in centimeters. So if this is 500, that means this is 5 meters. If it's set as 10, that means 10 centimeters every time I just move it around. Another thing that we also have here is the angle snap, which is doing the same exact thing, but for rotating. And the third one here is it will enable you to snap objects to the scale grid. So whenever you pull in a new object, it's going to snap it to the grid. And lastly here, this is the camera speed. Like I've pretty much said in the previous video, if you watched it, you want to set the camera speed to a speed in which you feel like it's efficient for the size of your scene. If you have a bigger scene, you want to have a higher speed for the camera, because navigating or traversing the scene in that case would be a pain. So now I want to go back to the wall. The first thing that I want to mention here is that if we want to make this thing flush with the floor, we might want to get out of perspective. The way to get out of perspective is just by clicking on the perspective here and choose, let's say, a top viewport. Now, in the top viewport, I can see that I actually have my model, or the geometry that I just pulled. It wasn't flush with the lower one, or this one. This is the floor. So this one we need to move downwards. So since I still have the snap on, all I gotta do is just move it downwards just one time. If I click on the edge, and I can just move the edge this way, go back to perspective, and you will notice that when you're in the top viewport and you select just this edge, it will select the entire face here. So now my wall is flush with the bottom here and this portion over here. So now I want to get this same exact wall and copy it over to this side. This is really easy. Just like you would do in Max by holding on Shift, inside Unreal, if you want to copy a given geometry or even an asset, what you want to do is hold down Alt and simply click away to the point where you want to have this thing, like so. If I want to get both of these as such and hold down Alt and rotate around, this thing will make me 2 more copies. I just need to move them into position again, like so, and I can go back into the top viewport, make sure this thing is sitting on the edge, like so. But also, I can just click on this, maximize or restore this viewport, and pretty much get a similar look like you would have in 3ds Max, where you have the front, the left, and the top viewports. Now this is going to make it easier to basically go in and select certain edges, like so. Move it into position, zoom in here, move this thing into position, and this thing is done on the top viewport. Select this, again, move, there we go, and move. All right, now back to this thing. All right, so with this, we have our internal box that we can use for our room. All right, so now we're coming to the point where you would probably ask yourself, what is the point of using this geometry if we could have basically gotten the same with just using a basic cube? Well, the thing with using the geometry is that once you create a box in here, like we saw, we can move it around or modify it. But if we actually go in and take a look in the options here, we have this thing here called brush settings. And the first thing that we have here is the brush type. So these geometries are actually brushes. Instead of thinking about them as hard geometry, think about them as brushes. By the option here that says additive, this means that whenever we put this thing around here and move it around, we're going to get that extra bit of geometry. But for example, I'm going to decrease this a tiny bit, like so. There we go. Now it goes through the wall. If I move this thing backwards, so it's out of the wall, and I change the brush type additive to subtractive, what you're going to notice is that a geometry in there just disappeared. But now, here's the funny thing. If I move this thing and overlap it with an existing geometry and put it here, what you're going to notice is that right away I have a perfect hole carved into my wall. Now this basically here would be what you would expect to find inside Max with a Boolean operation. So wherever I move this thing, it will automatically cut out or Boolean that geometry out of the way. So everything that's within this a border will be cut away. This can be very helpful, especially when you're blocking out your level and you want to put in, let's say, a window on the corner here, or I can just hold on Alt and copy one more option in here, one more of these subtractive boxes, and now I can scale it inwards until I get the opening that would suit a door. So, and the great thing about these is that you can basically go ahead and move them around and they will update depending on wherever you want to move them to. So that's the first thing that's very helpful when you are using the BSP brushes or the geometry brushes. Now the next thing that you would probably want to get when you're making a scene would probably be to insert something that is going to make it easier for you to know the scale of your scene. Because at the moment, I pretty much don't know how big these holes are or how tall these walls are. So the way to do it would be just import an asset that you would probably probably know the size of. Because this is a startup project, or it has the assets that come with the startup project, we can go into the starter content and from here go into props, and let's just pull out, let's try just with a chair. There we go. So rotate it around to point and put it next to the wall, as so. There we go. Awesome. So now I can see that, well, if this thing is the size of the chair, I'm gonna go ahead and drop in a door here, SM door. Rotate this thing 90 degrees, and I'm gonna go in and also put in one frame. All of these are assets that you get when you start a new project by clicking on the option whether or not you want to have the starter content. So now, knowing that this thing is the size for the door, I can just go in and now just place my door wherever I need it to be, like so. There you go. Probably just spend a bit more time trying to get it in the right position, but honestly at the moment that's not too important, but it's going to bug the hell out of me, so there we go. All right, so since we now know the height of the door, we can try and simply get a better or more suitable height for the rest of the room to coincide with that height of that door. The way to do it would be to select all of these individual walls. So hold on Control, select these walls, and now go into the geometry. And again, select that edge, hold on Control, select all of these. And now the thing here is that you want to select the wall on the side with the door last, because the last face that you select is going to be the face that you're going to be have the gizmo in which you can move around. So there we go. So let's put it to about so, and we get more or less the right height for the wall. Now the other thing that we want to do is I want to select the brush box that's used to cut out the hole for this. Now since I can't really select that box because I can't see it, I might be able to select it, yeah, like this, but it would be much easier to simply go in over here and select it in the world outliner. Now with this thing in hand, what I can do is with the geometry just move it upwards like so. And if I want to be even more correct, in order to build this is select the edge, move it as so. Move it on this side. And now the whole cutout for this door is going to be just right. There we go. Awesome. Now we no longer have any wall protruding to our door. We can do the same thing for the window if we choose. But for example, let's go. And since this is a window, it doesn't have to be on the floor. Just move it upwards a bit. And there we go. We have a nice corner window. Or since I don't have an asset for a corner window, I want to make it just easier for me and move this thing inwards so we have a window on the side opposed to having a corner one. As such. There we go. So we now have the most basic setup for our scene. And with that in mind, what I would like to do is I'm gonna select the floor we have and pull it upwards so we can basically copy it, and out of the floor we just make a ceiling type geometry. We just need to make sure that it's going to snap to our existing frame. There we go. So now we have this enclosed room in which we have our chair, we have the door, and for now I'm going to maximize this thing again. And since I want to see what's inside my room, I'm going to go over to the box brush, and here I'm going to rename this to ceiling, so I know what it is. And once it's named ceiling, I'm going to click on this eye, which is going to hide that geometry. All right, awesome. So for this, the only thing that I want to add in is a few more assets in here out of the existing ones. So let's put it in a table, like so. And while we're here, I just want to show you another quick thing about using assets, and that is, let's put in this statue over here on top of this, as so. Now the thing is, whenever you put something inside Unreal and it has a collision, which is something that we're going to be talking about later in a different video, you should know that you can put anything on top of that asset. For example, if I want to get this statue and if I want to put it on top of this table, I don't have to go ahead and manually try to guess where this thing is going to have to be in order to stand flush with the table, or go into the side view and try to get it perfect. What I can do is just simply put it above it and press the End key on the keyboard. That thing is going to drop it down on whatever surface has a collision. In this case, the collision is with the table. If I move it over to the side and press the End, it's going to put it on our floor. This is a very, very, very helpful option, so you might want to you might want to remember it or write it down. All right, so I'm going to put the statue on top of the table here by just pressing End. And another thing that I want to show you while we are here at the moment is that when you have certain elements in the world, what you can do is you can basically link them together. What this means is that, for example, now if I select my table down here and I move it around, what you're going to notice is that this table moves, but this statue is going to be left floating in mid-air. And what I want to do is I want to select this table, and when I move it, I want to make sure that this statue moves along with it. The easiest way to do this is go over in the outliner, select the statue, and simply click and drag on top of the table. So now what you're going to notice is that if I click on this new arrow here, now when I select the table and move it around, the existing statue is going to move along with the table. But if I go in and click on the statue alone, I can move it around without that thing being influenced by the table. So this is a parent and child relationship. Again, a very important thing to remember, especially if you have assets that are sitting one on top of the other. All right, so I don't want to go in any deeper about this. So the last thing that I would like to add is I'm going to add in this lamp ceiling, like so. Put it upwards. And in this case, since this is an overhanging lamp, I'm going to go in here. I want to unhide so. And now it looks like this thing is flush on the ceiling. So what we're going to do here, just so we can see what's how our scene looks like, I'm going to switch over to lit. Now the first thing you're going to notice is that we can't see anything. The reason for this is that we have no lights in our scene. Now if you want to add in a light, we go over to lights, and from here I'm basically going to pull out one point light and put it in our scene like so. Now move it upwards a bit, and now if I change to lit, we can notice that our light, depending on where we have it, is lighting the entire scene. And we are getting some lighting happening in here. But since this is a very, very simple light, you're going to notice that a lot of the shadows on the ceiling are going to be very, very bright. We have different types of lights. In this case, I dropped in a point light, which in case of Macs would be just like using an Omni light. It's basically a light shining in all directions. If we use a spotlight, now this thing would be more in tune with what you would expect to have with a light that is going to be coming from something like this. So it's going to be a light that is going to shine down. And the last thing that I'm going to add is I'm going to add in a directional light. Now directional light is basically light coming from a sun. As you can see, like so. We have light coming in from the outside and lighting our room. Inside it's still very dark, but again, this thing would be something that I would like to cover more in depth in a future video, in which I'm going to cover more about lighting in Unreal and all of the problems that can arrive. But for now, in this video, we basically went in, we created the floor, the ceiling, the cutout for the walls, the cutout for the window and door, and we saw how we can link certain assets to each other, so when one is moved it will take the other. We also learned how we can clone assets around, and for this I think we can basically call it a day. So I hope you guys had fun and also you learned something new. If you do have any questions, leave them below. I will meet you in the comment section of the video. Also, if you enjoy the videos, then please click the like button, as it really does help a lot. And if you are not subscribed, now is a great time to do so. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all in the next videos. Bye-bye.